who spent years in archives most people never see, including the Vatican's, reading sworn testimony about saints who levitate in front of entire towns. Then the government noticed her research, and she ended up blindfolded in the New Mexico desert, digging for debris at an alleged UFO crash site.
Blindfolded and driven out to the desert with a shovel? Sometimes I miss the old Vegas.
By the way, this is a woman who won't set foot in a haunted house. The blindfold was fine, apparently. Today we're covering the flying saints, the recruitment, and why she believes a new religion is forming around UFOs, with somebody already writing its Bible. Her new book, The Others, just hit the New York Times bestseller list.
The Times list is rigged, and controlled by big publishing. Unless she's on it, then it's a very prestigious honor. Congratulations, Professor.
And her leading candidate for the Antichrist? I didn't see that one coming.
It's a cat, isn't it?
It's not a cat.
Yeah, it's exactly what a cat would want you to think.
Stick around after the episode. I'll pop back in and untangle the conversation. Let's go down to the basement. Did you start your career in death? I know that you teach at the Museum of Death and Dying sometimes in Brooklyn?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
What was it that drew you to death?
Death.
Yeah.
I know. Okay, so I've been studying religion my whole life, and I'm in religious studies, so I just have to explain what that is. So, because a lot of people don't know. They think that if you're studying religion, you're like a minister or a theologian. And I went to school with priests in formation, people who were going to be priests and nuns and so forth. So I have that background. But I took an academic track. So I was interested in religion from a perspective of, I just didn't think I was good enough, frankly, to be a theologian. Like, in order to be a theologian, you have to, like, kind of walk the walk, right? And I was like, I'm not, I'm probably not that good, but I'm really interested in religion. So.
Well, what's the difference between a theologian and the clergy?
Yeah, they're the same.
They're the same.
So in order to be a clergy, you have to have a theology degree. And so I had the same background as a person who has a theology degree, but I went extra and got a PhD in an academic field. And I'm super happy I did. So I'm in this field called religious studies, which looks at religion. I mean, most of the world are religious practitioners. It's really an important thing to know about. And so I study, but not from a belief perspective. So I'm not advocating for any belief. I'm not advocating for belief in Christianity. I'm not advocating for belief in Buddhism. And I don't advocate for people to believe in UFOs. But, that was the second part of my career, was studying UFO belief. And so how did I get into death and things like that? So it wasn't really a choice. It just kind of happened. So I was looking at the ways in which my field is looking at technology and religious belief and the interactions that technology has on how people practice their beliefs and what they believe in. And so, but I was really interested in extraordinary events and how people describe them. So what would that be? That would be like looking at angel contact events in the historical record for Christians. What did they believe, or Jewish people? So I started to look at that. That invariably crossed over into people having near-death experiences and things like that, because a lot of people who have extraordinary events also have brushes with death or something like that. And so that's how it happened. It was very on accident, kind of. And one of my first publications, when I was a young assistant professor, was looking, and by the way, I also spent a lot of time in archives. And archives are old libraries. So this is for young people out there. Believe it or not, there is non-digitized information that is not on the internet. Information that is, not on your phone, that ChatGPT doesn't know about. And this is all contained in archives. So I spent a lot of time, like years and years, in archives, old archives, Vatican archives all over the place. And these, we're talking about like manuscripts and books and even stones that have pictoglyphs. Like petroglyphs? Yeah, thank you, yeah. Pictograms, petroglyphs, right? So I've seen Aztec petroglyphs, yeah, and
so it's comparative religion. It's everybody.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
it is. It's comparative religion. And so the first publication that I wrote was about near-death experiences of children from the 1800s. And there was, believe it or not, there was a whole genre of writing about children who died and came back and said what they saw. Or just before they died, they were in a state where they could see people who had been dead and then tell their friends, oh, so-and-so is okay. Or, I saw so-and-so and this is what they want to say to you and so forth. And so I thought this was really interesting. So that's what really got me into looking at death and why actually I became, I'm part of the American Academy of Religion, which is an international group, or mostly American, but international, of people like me who study religion. And I co-chaired the death session of that for like 10 years. And now it's co-chaired by by a former student who's now a professor.
So children near-death experiences is interesting because they don't have enough time on the earth to be primed for what to see.
Yeah.
And yet they're seeing the same things that kind of everybody sees.
Yeah. So near-death experiences are interesting. One of the first recorded near-death experiences was recorded about 2,500 years ago. And that's with Plato, actually. So in his book, The Republic, he talks about a soldier who dies on the field, the front, and everybody thinks he's dead. And then he comes back to life, and he says, wow, look what I saw when I was dead. And it's really interesting. And so they've been around for a long time. And they look similar. The patterns are similar.
Are you seeing the same patterns in other cultures and religions as well?
Yes, you do. You see the same patterns. There are inflections, cultural inflections that are different, but for the most part, it looks pretty consistent. So what you see when I know it sounds strange, when a person dies and they come back and talk about it, and
it's not strange in this room.
Okay, good, all right. So often what happens is they have like what is called a life review. And in ancient Egypt, there's the same thing. There's this god Osiris who's looking at, if your soul is not, he weighs your soul.
Against a feather.
Yeah, exactly. And if it's heavy, there's a demon that, so there's always a sense of judgment that you get after a really kind of okay experience of meeting a guide, right? And the guide can be a luminous being, or it could be, if you're Christian, Jesus, or so there's always that cultural inflection that helps you frame what you see, and then if the person has to come back to explain that they went through this. But this was a whole genre of literature for Catholics of the medieval era, and the basically the European continent, right, where these people are having these experiences, and then monks are writing about it, and they're called otherworld journeys. And so I got into the otherworld journeys, and that was, my first book was about purgatory, which is a dogma of the Catholic Church that describes when souls are not good enough to go to heaven, where do they go? It's this place called purgatory. And so purgatory was, I spent a lot of time in archives to write that book, so that was my first book.
Why did Catholicism kind of abandon the idea of purgatory?
Well, okay, so they haven't technically abandoned purgatory, so that's still a dogma of the church. What happened was that there was a big, almost like an internal reformation for Catholics in the 1960s, between 1961 and 65. And this is called Vatican II. And what they did was they determined that a lot of people were falling away from the Catholic Church. Why? Right? And they thought it was this emphasis on, well, we tell them when they die, their soul will go to hell or purgatory. It looks pretty bad, right? And that's not a good look, right? So they reformed how they taught their priests, and they taught their priests in seminary to downplay this idea of purgatory. And so in that sense, so when churches in pre-Vatican II churches were built with a place where people would pray for the souls in purgatory. Though that's not done now. That devotion is still done by believing Catholics, right? Many Catholics don't know about it. Like,
No.
Young Catholics aren't. I mean, if they're traditionalist Catholics, by the way, this is a source of contention every time I talk about it. Catholics email me and they're very upset. And they say, no, we know about this, Diana. What are you talking about? And I'm like, well, you know about it. But like the Catholics that come into my class, those young people, they don't know about purgatory. So it is a thing that they downplayed that for those Catholics. But there's a comeback right now happening in Catholicism. And those ideas that were downplayed in Vatican II are now being embraced by young Catholics.
That's funny. So whether it's Vatican II or 367 or Carthage or the Council of Trent, it's all about marketing.
Yes, it is. Yes, yeah.
How does the idea of purgatory and Catholicism track with Dante's work?
By 3 p.m., I'm usually 4 coffees deep. My heart's doing that weird flutter thing. I'm jittery, and somehow I'm still tired. Then an hour later, I crash. And of course, all that caffeine means my sleep that night is garbage. That was basically my routine for years. Caffeine, spike, crash, sleep terribly, wake up tired, and start the whole thing over again. So that's when I decided to swap that 4th coffee for an ultra pouch. I just tuck one into my desk and keep working. No jitters, no racing heart, no weird anxious energy. And about 20 minutes later, I'm just focused. Steady, not wired or buzzing, just clear. What's great about ultra pouches is there's no nicotine or caffeine. They're partnered with neuroscientists to build these with clinically proven nootropics. Infinity PX for a cleaner, smoother energy boost than caffeine, L-theanine for calm focus, alpha GPC for mental clarity, and B6 and B12 to keep things balanced. So you get the lift without another cup of coffee and the crash that comes with it. No more counting how many coffees I've had by lunch. No more negotiating with my own nervous system at 3 p.m. Just one pouch, steady focus, and a sleep score that isn't actively judging me. Ultra is the ultimate guilt-free pouch, delivering instant focus and mental clarity without nicotine or caffeine. New customers can use code BASEMENT for 15% off at takeultra.com. That's takeultra.com for 15% off with code BASEMENT. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Tell them the basement.
Okay, so Dante's describing, so Dante Alighieri, right? So he's in the 1200s, writes the Divine Comedy, which is basically about his journey, his soul. You know, he's in love with this woman named Beatrice, and so, and he's had a pretty terrible life, right? So he's been ostracized, and you know, so he's upset. But he writes this beautiful epic poem about a journey that his soul takes through the various levels of the afterlife. So there's the Purgatorio, there's heaven, and then there's hell. And
I think everyone knows the Inferno, but they don't know Purgatorio or Paradiso.
That's right, they don't. That's right. And so what happens though during this is he has a guide. So you know, it's a classic kind of near-death journey, but like upgraded, right?
Yeah.
So it's not a couple pages, and it's also beautiful. But he also describes in depth the punishments of the people in the various places, like in hell, the Inferno.
Yeah.
And it looks brutal, right? And in some people that did him wrong in life, you see them there in the poem. So, but it's really beautiful when he gets to. So Virgil, by the way, is his first guide and is what he calls a good pagan, right? So a pagan being a non-Christian, and he's not allowed to go into heaven. So he has to stop at some point, and then, of all people, Beatrice becomes his guide, and when she ascends, it's quite beautiful actually, and I recommend it as excellent reading.
It is.
Yeah.
And the political commentary is entertaining in it.
It is, yeah. So, but your question was, does he get it right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the thing, is we don't know, right? We don't know. But I think that he follows the template of the medieval otherworld journey. And he has all the elements there, right? So, and I don't know if he gets it right, but there's a part of me that thinks, especially when you get to how he describes the heavens, which bring in like the imagery of the stars in the imagery of space. And I mean, that's pretty cool. And you know, he's writing like so long ago. How could he know those things, like the Imperium and so forth? He's talking about a center of the universe in space where God, you know, attracts, and pretty amazing.
It's almost like he read the Book of Enoch where he wrote that. So we know that Plato influenced Catholicism. Was there influence? What about Osiris and the Duat? Is there influence there as well?
Gosh, that's a good question. I can't say authoritatively. I don't know.
Only one guy knows.
Yeah, right, yeah. No, I do not know that.
I'm asking more academically, if you see that. Because I see the connections between when they go from polytheism into Akhenaten and monotheism, and then it dovetails very nicely into the story of Moses and Exodus. There's a through line there that I think you can follow through history. I was just curious if early Catholics were aware of the Duat and how all that worked. Could you see something?
I would assume so, but I can't see. My position is if I don't know it specifically and can give you the evidence for it, but I can tell you off record. Okay, off record. I think so. So, but you know, let's just say that that's not my academic self saying that because I don't know authoritatively.
So everything you're saying today, are you speaking for UNC? You're the spokesperson out today? No?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm speaking as a private individual.
Fair enough.
Okay. Yeah, but I do agree that, you know, when I went to seminary and, you know, did that training, we didn't learn about Socrates and Plato and their influence, although it's truly there.
You didn't?
No. And that's what I think is so amazing, was that, in a sense, I had one of the best educations you can have in that field. But so many things I learned on my own by reading, you know, theologians that did have that training. So that training kind of got cut off. And thank goodness for, I mean, this is the good part of technology, you know, you can learn a lot, right, today.
Yeah.
Just doing your own stuff, right? What would you call it, like armchair PhD or something like that? And you can definitely do that. And also another thing, though, which I like about the work I do is that I have a lot of friends who know a lot about different things. So if I don't know the answers, like Hebrew Bible information or something like that, I could just go to them and say, what does this say in the Hebrew, right? And we can work it out. And that's part of the reason I went to school, by the way, is so I could have an extended network of people who, because you can't know everything.
Right.
But you and your friends can know a lot.
So when you read Plato, when you read the Republic, and he talked about the immortal spirit, you were just like, wait a minute.
Well, you see, I was exposed to that as an undergraduate and even as a high school kid, right?
Sure.
And so I just read it like they taught me, which was sadly kind of boring, like the boring version of Plato, which, by the way, is really hard to do because it's so fascinating.
Yeah.
And so I read it and didn't take a lot away from it, actually, just thought it was political. And it wasn't until after graduate school, actually, that I started to go back. And even after doing UFO research, I started to go back and think, what? Like he was talking about the simulation theory.
Yes.
You know, he was talking about the bad guys. You know, he was talking about so many things that are relevant today. And wow. He was even talking about externalized memory.
Externalized memory. Where did he talk about that?
In Phaedrus. So in Phaedrus, Socrates is having a conversation with Phaedrus. And Phaedrus is like, he's a young guy from Athens who's like into the newest technology, which is writing. And he's all about it. And he's like, this is going to be cool. This is going to take over, you know, kind of like AI guys today, right? So that's Phaedrus. And so Socrates is like, let's talk about this. And he goes, what are the repercussions of you losing your memory to this technology? That's what he says. I mean, he doesn't use that language. But he's talking about memory. He uses that language. And so he's talking about the externalization of memory and how it's going to change you. It's going to change how you access knowledge. And you're going to lose the capacity to do that. Somebody just asked me recently if Socrates would, in fact, he was a student, he was a graduate student, And she said, I'm asking everybody this question. I want to ask you. I was like, okay. And she said, what would Socrates think about AI today? And I was like, oh, he would just die, right? You'd bring him back to life, show him AI, he'd probably die. And she was like, oh, are you sure? And she was kind of disappointed. And I said, yes, because he warned about if we, think about it. Culture was orally transmitted knowledge. And many cultures today still, like indigenous cultures, no way. They're not going to do the writing thing. They're not going to externalize their memory because they have a lot of knowledge. They don't want to mess that up, okay? So that's going to be something that probably a lot of your viewers won't understand, but I'm going to try to explain it. And that is that, in Phaedrus, what's going on is that Socrates, the reason why he knows so much is because he doesn't know anything. And that's what he said. He says, I don't know anything. But then how does he know things? He knows math. He knows things that we just figured out using technology today. These things called the solids, the platonic solids, they're real, right? But they're not in our dimension. And we're using, professors at UC Berkeley are now figuring out how to identify these things and what they are, and like the tetrahedron and so forth. Well, how did he know that, right? How did he know that? He was using his brain and his body in a different way, and he said, writing's going to mess this up. We don't really want to do this. And he called it anamnesis, so it's a form of retrieval, like memory retrieval knowledge.
What's the problem with writing? Because it would be corrupted. The oral tradition would corrupt it as well. You would have your own leanings would leak into that. So
he did have the hope that there was a form of writing which could be helpful. Okay, there was a form of technology which could be helpful. This would only be, though, for people who were already in contact with the ability to retrieve knowledge in this way that he's talking about. And there aren't very many people that could do that.
No.
Because he had to train them, right? They had to be trained. And so my grad student, there you go. He's not going to be happy about AI.
Don't we see it with every technology, whether it's video games or comic books, any kind of new way of communicating? There's always, what are the repercussions of this?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I do think, though, that he's right, that we can have it, but we just have to have it in a way that's helpful. And I always present to my students when I give this talk to them, because right now what I find is that young people know what's happening. They're not they're also upset. They're like, oh, how could you have given us a world like this? And I'm like, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
What do we do now? I lost the train of thought that I was going down.
That's okay. We'll pick up the train at some point.
Okay.
That's the boomer generation. Gen X is fixing it. We're fixing it. I don't know if it's compatible in ancient Egyptian, but what about reincarnation? How does that work with Catholicism? Is it compatible?
No.
It's not compatible.
No. Even though there are references you can see Hebrew Bible references and so forth, and even in the New Testament there are things like, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
But no, it's not going to be compatible. Catholicism is an interpretation of the Bible and the extra biblical texts and so forth that went into influencing the early church. So it's not the only Christian religion. There are Christian denominations in which reincarnation is compatible, but those are different interpretations. But for Catholicism, it's not.
Well, how do you feel personally in comparative studies?
Okay, so so as an academic looking at that, there are a lot of things that the denominations hold as tradition and dogma that when you look at, this is why it's important to make this distinction to students, especially when they come in and they have their tradition, they're Jewish or they're Christian. You don't want to upset their ideas, but you want to present what we have over here is religious studies. We're looking at it historically. Some of the things that we get from the Hebrew Bible is that it looks like, it's not monotheistic in the beginning, right? And that, there's an idea of other gods and so forth. But that doesn't have to challenge their faith's interpretation They just have to go back and figure it out. Like, what does their faith say about this, right? And I think that's why I was interested in religious studies, because I thought all those challenges, you can't then, for me, it's not okay. Like, God gave me a brain, right? I'm supposed to use it. So I'm not going to say, that's not compatible. I'm going to put it over here and not even think about it. But every once in a while it creeps in, right?
Sure it does.
What does that mean? And so, so religious studies allows you to think about those things and, deeply. And what I find is that Catholics a lot of Catholics think about those things.
Of course they do.
Yeah.
I mean, when you read some of the stories about children who come back or children who are remembering past lives, I think most of it is bunk, but some of the stories are really compelling. Have you ever read about like James Leninger and some of those other stories?
Yeah, I've read so many near-death experience stories. Yeah.
And as a Catholic, how do you dismiss it?
No. I believe that people have near-death experiences. I have students, throughout
What about past life experiences, though?
Yeah, okay, so I don't know. It seems amazingly compelling, like you say, that, when young children, talk about, their lives, and you can corroborate that. There's that University of Virginia archive, right? That is there. I forgot the name of the archive, so pardon me for the folks who do that work. There's a bunch of people there who do that work. You should have them on, right? That would be really interesting. And they could talk about their archive and all the children's near-death experiences that they have in that archive and that work that they've done.
So there's room in your belief structure to allow for that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So the thing about me is, if it's data that you can't explain, it's data you can't explain, right? So I'm not going to dismiss it, especially if people are having these experiences.
Of course, especially, and since they're so similar. I mean, I don't consider myself very religious, although I'm moving more that way. I think a lot of people are. But I've said very often that, after I die, if Jesus is there, the first thing I'll tell him is thank God. Right?
Yeah.
So I'm open to it.
Yeah, for sure.
I like data.
Yeah, that's right. Me too.
But as you get older, you start to become a little more open-minded about what comes next.
It does happen. Yeah.
And how do you feel about that? Do you worry about your mortality?
I don't worry about it, but I do feel this way about it. I feel that, first of all, I kind of feel like Socrates. That, this is what he sadly had to kill himself. I'm not going to do that.
Yes.
But, Athens wanted him to take hemlock.
Right. And he chose it.
He did, because he didn't have to.
He didn't have to.
Yeah. So, but this is what he said to his friends who were upset with him. He said, look, I've led a life that I examined and I feel good about. So if I die and there's an afterlife, I'll be hanging out with people I like, right? And he goes, I'll have great conversations with them. If there's nothing, then it'll be like the best sleep I've ever had. Right?
You're not going to care.
Yeah, exactly. So why fret about it? But what I do feel is that I am happy that I am alive so that I can do things I think I should do. Like, the things I think I should do. I have kids. I'm going to make sure that they're set up all right. I feel that I need to do that. I have students. I feel like I have an obligation to my students to do the best I can for them and to help them learn the things they need to know, and even to help the ones that I'm in direct contact with do well, outside when they're done, right? Kind of postgraduate. So I have these things that I feel like I should do. And I'm glad I'm alive so I can do that. And, maybe I want to be able to, if I know when I'm going to die, if I'm like really old and I say, okay, it's going to happen any day now, and I feel okay about that, like Socrates, right?
Yes.
Yeah. But I don't feel that way yet. So I feel like I'm not, seriously. So, being transparent.
Yeah.
I would like to have more time to do as much as I can to get to the point. And I'm not in any way that I'm like selfish. Like, I want to feel good about what I've done in my life. I mean, that's not really that selfish. The things I want to do aren't like, make $1 million, make $1 billion, or whatever. That's great for the people who want to do that. But I guess I'm people oriented.
Every diet trend asks the same thing. Readjust your whole life overnight. New meals, new gym schedule, new willpower you didn't know you needed. Weight Loss by Hims does the math differently. One prescription, one app, and a provider who actually adjusts your dose with you. Hims gives you access to an affordable range of FDA-approved GLP-1 medications, including the Wegovy pill and the Wegovy pen. Lose up to 20% of your body weight when combined with diet and exercise. Wegovy helps regulate your appetite so you eat less, and it's the first GLP-1 pill for weight loss. No needles needed. Everything happens online. You talk to a licensed provider who figures out if treatment is right for you. And if it is, your medication ships straight to your door. No insurance needed. Your care team is on call 24/7 for messaging, and the app backs you up with meal plans, fitness videos, recipes, and sleep content. Dosage changes are unlimited, so your plan keeps adjusting as your body does. Ready to reach your goals? Visit hims.com/thewifiles to get a personalized, affordable plan that gets you. That's hims.com/thewifiles. hims.com/thewifiles. Weight Loss by Hims is not available in all 50 states. Wegovy is the registered trademark of Novo Nordisk AS. To get started and learn more, including important safety information, Wegovy clinical study information, and restrictions, visit hims.com.
Well, your new book is going to make $1 million. Congratulations, by the way. On
thank
New York
you.
Times bestseller list.
Yeah, amazing. I can't believe that.
Hasn't been 2 weeks yet.
No, it hasn't. Yeah, I feel really shocked.
Do your students know how like famous you are?
I don't think so. I mean, some of them do, but I'm not famous, okay?
Right.
But when they some of them are really happy about what I do. Some of them send me notes and say, "Wow, cool! I saw you on this podcast." They're gonna say that after this podcast. So my kids love this podcast, and so that's kind of cool. I do like that.
Yeah. And being well known doesn't have to be a bad thing, because these are ideas that more people should hear, even if you don't agree with them.
Yeah, I believe that. Yeah.
So you're on an assignment translating Latin and Hollywood calls, and it's The Conjuring.
That's right. Yeah.
What happened there?
That was great. I loved that. Okay, so this happened in 2011, and I'm doing all my normal work, right? Just kind of like doing the professor stuff, and I get a phone call, and by the way, Wilmington, North Carolina, we have movies. It's called like Hollywood East. So we have like big movie studios and so forth. A lot of things get filmed there, and so I get a phone call, and one of the people, they got a phone call, and they said, "We need someone who does Latin." And I was like, "Latin?" I'm like, "My Latin's horrible." I go, "But most likely it's going to be an exorcism movie, a movie about exorcism, because why else are they going to want somebody helping them with their Latin?" So I said, "Well, I'll go." Well, oh no, actually what I said was, "We do have a person who does Latin." And I said, "You should talk to her first." She didn't want anything to do with it. She said, "No, I'm not interested. I'm way too busy." I was like, "Okay, I'll do it." So I go out to the studio, and it's
to LA?
No, it's actually in Wilmington.
Okay.
They're filming in Wilmington. And they let me in, and I meet Chad Hayes and Carrie Hayes, and they're the screenwriters, and they bring me back, and I see James Wan on set. And the reason I know about him is because my husband really likes his movies.
Sure.
And so I'm like, "James Wan," like I don't see him, kind of like. And then I see some of the famous people that are on set, and Vera Farmiga and so forth. And I was like, okay, this is going to be a cool movie. And they tell me what it's about, and I could help them because they were translating the Latin Rite, which is an exorcism prayer, which is the exorcism prayer, but they were translating the instructions. They weren't actually translating.
Oh.
Yeah, so I said, at least I know this much. Like,
right.
My Latin's terrible, but at least I know that much. And so they brought me on to help them, and I had a really fun time doing that. And I still know those guys, and I still work with them.
And that's funny. Did you consult on any other movies?
Yeah, I consulted on a bunch of movies.
And Netflix?
Yeah, I did a series that was nominated for an Emmy, and it's an Amblin series, which is great, and it's about encounters, which is strangely the name of my book. That was an accident, but my book comes out, and then their documentary comes out, and it's about UFOs, and so that was fun to work on. Yeah, so I've been doing that. I'm doing that now. I can't say what I'm doing.
Oh, you can't?
No, but when it does happen, I'll tell you about it.
Okay.
but it's really exciting.
I bet it is. All right, more about that. I want to know about Cosmism and Fedorov.
Fedorov, right? Okay.
That sounded like a wild theory.
Yeah. Okay, so you're talking about a movement in Russia that is called the Russian Cosmist Movement. And the Cosmist Movement was a movement started by Nikolai Fedorov, but also Konstantin Tchaikovsky was part of it. So he's the guy who did the rocket technology for Russia, right? So Fedorov was this guy who was a librarian and, really just totally into what he was, like his books and thinking about like writing science fiction and thinking about getting, like the next iteration of human beings. They were going to be close to being like angels, basically. They were going to take the place of fallen angels, because fallen angels, this is his idea, these are his ideas. And he inspired all of the next generation of rocket technologists, actually. And so it was this belief system that incorporated Christianity, because part of the task, so they had a task of mission, and so he thought, that the next iteration of humanity, what we need to do is not only space, but we also need to resurrect them. That would be the good thing to do. That would be, if we could do that, we must do that. And so it became like a moral imperative. And there are Russian billionaires who are set on 2040 being the time when we'll be able to do that. When human beings, kind of like the singularity, right? When human beings will be immortal. So that's Russian cosmism. And it happened between 1880 to the early 20th century.
Well, how did Fedorov think that was going to happen? What would the technology be?
Well, he didn't know, actually.
Okay.
Or else he would have done it.
He would have done it.
Oh, 100%. He was bent on doing this.
How do you resurrect someone who's been dead for 1,000 years?
Marshall 023.
I mean, think about it though.
122.
How do we make it into space?
State 12.2.
So those kinds of things that we think are, like back in the day, space travel was for nutty people back in the day.
Right.
People thought that they were crazy. And, but now we're doing it, right? Even airplanes, even electricity, all these things. Now we can do these things. So he thought, and by the way, this is a really interesting idea, that if we can think it, we can do it, okay? And I realize that a lot of the history of our country and Russia has these people in them who are like thinking on the very edge, and they don't doubt that we are going to do this, okay? And it's kind of interesting because then it looks like it's happening, this is happening, that's happening, right? Obviously resurrecting the dead isn't happening, but this was their moral, they believed that this was a moral thing to do.
Well, if we start resurrecting the dead and things start to track like First Thessalonians...
I know, yeah.
I don't know, is that a good thing?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, always, who brought up the idea of, it's the Jurassic Park kind of ethical dilemma, right?
Right.
Should we do it? Well, we could do it, but should we do it?
Right.
Right, with technology. Was Mary Shelley.
Mm-hmm.
Frankenstein. So she wrote Frankenstein in 1800. She was only 18 when she did that, by the way. And that was her idea, was that, is this really a good idea because we could do it? Like, Frankenstein is the scientist who basically resurrects, takes these bodies, puts it together, uses a little bit of like techno electricity, and boom, there's this monster. And it's a monster. It's not like, we could call it a good monster or a complicated monster, right?
Complicated.
Yeah, complicated. But, she's basically putting the ethical dilemma out there.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder, is Fedorov a contemporary of Jules Verne at that time?
Is that, okay, Jules Verne is going to be, is that 1880s?
I think it's got to be close. I'm just wondering because Jules Verne kind of made he was basically hard sci-fi.
Yeah.
A lot of that stuff has happened.
Yeah, I know. I think so, actually. So the Russian version of, because there are a lot that the people who were really intelligent were hanging out with each other, like the Americans and the Russians, and they had their communities that they were mutually, discussing these kinds of things. Maybe it's hard to say. If Jules Verne was writing at that point, I would have to assume that Fedorov knew.
Sure. Because everybody did.
Yeah, so of course he's going to, and plus he's into sci-fi.
Right, that's right.
See, this is exactly how academics think. They're like, even if they can't, give the resources and evidence, they're like, this person had to have been influenced by this.
Of course.
Person, but we can't prove it. Yeah, but they were.
But they must have been.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Who isn't influenced by Michael Crichton or, Christopher Nolan? Everybody knows who they are and their stories.
That's right.
It's interesting that whether it's Russia or America, the rocket scientists are always involved in the esoteric and all these weird things.
Yeah.
This is an accident?
Okay, is this an accident? So that's a good question. I was surprised when I found out that this was the case. So when I moved from Catholic history into looking at UFOs, I decided the first thing I needed to do was look at the history of the space program. So I started to read everything I could. And I also realized I had to read about the Russian space program too, because each of those were the viable programs that got us actually off Earth, right? And what I found was that at the basis of those were scientists who were into the esoteric, right? Maybe the Christian esoteric on the Russian side, and then the occult esoteric on our side.
Yep.
And the thing is that, so I had friends at this point who were in the Space Force and who were, it wasn't called the Space Force then, and were like, look, if you need to go to the Air Force archive, just let me know. And I'm like, yeah, of course, I do. It's in LA, this and that. And he's like, I can get you in there. And so they were like, yeah, no problem. We have a friend who's an academic writing about the history of space, And at that point, I had given a conference, I had given some information, like a belief system of UFOs. And they could Google that and find out. As soon as they figured that out, they were like, no, you can't come.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm not surprised.
And there were a lot of things, though, so I went over everything I could that was digitized, right, about the American, that they released. And their historians were really transparent. They were like, a lot of this history has to be written by future historians because it's still classified and we can't write it. And I was like, wow, at least they're honest.
Yeah. Take us to the Vatican archives. I mean, I still call them the secret archives, but I know the apostolic archives. Yeah. How many times did you go there?
So I went there for 2 weeks once.
To the archives?
Yeah, the archives and the library, the archives, the Secreto archives, and the observatory archives.
So how did that all start?
Okay, well, it was, again, wonderful things often happen truly by accident.
They do.
So I'm working at my university, and I work with a sister there for Catholic students who come and do things. But she wants to invite the current director of the Vatican Observatory, which is an observatory owned by the Vatican, to come talk about what they do there, the space research and so forth, for our students and other people who want to come, community members and so forth. So she said, can you pick up Brother Guy? He's going to be at the airport. And so, I'm always kind of the go-to person to do all these things. So I'm like, sure, no problem.
You're the You're the airport run?
Yeah. So, for Sister, Rose, I'll do that,
Sure.
So I'm like, yeah, so I go pick him up. And I take him to Father Joe's. Father Joe has this really beautiful house next to his church, which is on the ocean. So I take Brother Guy there, and they invite us to have some sweet tea. We're in the South, so we're on the porch looking at the ocean, just talking about random stuff. And it occurs to me to ask him about, I'm starting this UFO research, and it occurs to me to ask him where in the Vatican, because I haven't gone yet, I can find some of those books about space stuff.
And
Established
so I
Angels
just
1,
asked
state
him,
11.3.
I'm writing something about, belief in the rise of UFOs and stuff. Because he knows I'm totally academic. So he's like, all that stuff that comes in the Vatican actually comes to my archive in the Space Observatory in Castle Gandolfo. He goes, we have a place you can stay. You're welcome to come for as long as you need to. And I was like, I'll do that.
Yes, you'll do that, of course.
State
So I did that,
11.3.
yeah.
So
Altimeter
that's
290.93.
different in the archives, right? The observatory.
It is, but
Downstairs.
yeah, okay, so the archive itself, it is, okay, so there's the Vatican archive, which in the secret archive. And so the secret just means that it's the Pope's archive. Like he gets to decide, all about it and so forth. And so that was cool. So there is a basement area, right? And there are various places to go on site at the Vatican. And that was definitely an interesting place to be.
Well, take us through the day, the first day. What doors did you walk through? Who, the guys with guns, the security?
Okay, you know about that. Okay, yeah. So that was really shocking. So I was really
What was shocking? You didn't think there'd be security there?
No, I just didn't realize how scary they would look. So
oh, yeah, these aren't Swiss guards.
No, they're not.
These are actual guards.
Yeah, they're guards who, they're like, they look like army guys, like, with everything, they have these big guns and so forth. And
the Swiss guards are badass too. They just wear a funny uniform.
Of course.
Those guys are serious.
Yeah. Yes, right. So it just so happened I went there with a person that I knew from the. He was affiliated with our government, working in Space Force. Okay, and he suggested early on that he come with me because he would be able to identify stuff that might be of interest. And since I was doing that research, I thought, okay, that's probably a good idea. So I said, I didn't think he'd be able to get in. All right. So I can take you through that first day.
Yes.
Okay. So we go on 2 separate flights. Okay. The reason is because I have flight anxiety and I really couldn't get on the first flight. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I do fly all over the place, but I have flight anxiety. So going to Italy was, scary for me, but I did it. And so, but I couldn't get on the first flight. So he went out there and I told him how to try to get into the archive.
Yeah, what do? You just go, F it, I can't do it, or you go home?
No,
it was just the archives.
It's like a struggle, I'm telling you.
Call a doctor, get some Xanax, get on there.
No, that doesn't even help.
Wow.
I know, it's pretty bad.
I don't really like to fly either, but I mean, I'll go to, if the Vatican calls, I'm there.
Well, yes. So I did go.
So the next day you made it?
Of course.
Okay, of course you
I
made
knew
it.
I had to go.
You have to.
It's not okay. It's not so easy, all right, folks?
It's not. It's not.
All right. So he gets there first, and he's doesn't know what to do. He can't get in because it's hard to get in. You have to have a PhD in Catholic studies or something like that, and you have to have a need to know, right? You have to have legitimate reason to go and get in.
And for people who don't know, you can't just go there and browse like they do in the decimal system. You need to say, this is what I want to see.
Yes, way beforehand, because it might be something that they have. There are miles and miles of
53 miles.
That's right, of archival material. So they need to know so they could go find it. Okay, and so there's all that, and so there's the library, which sometimes people can get into, but this is not that. This is not the library. This is the archive. By the way, there are books written about how to study at the archive. So books written about it.
I think you would need that.
Yeah. So I read those books, and I also got in touch with the authors. And I was like, I'm going here. Things probably have changed, and all the correspondence I had to use Google Translate because it was all in Italian. So all right. So anyway, so the person is Tyler. That's a pseudonym. And
Are we not naming him yet? Because we know who it is.
I know, but listen, I can't name him because in my field, it's an ethical imperative.
Fair enough.
Okay.
I've talked about it on the show. For the people who are upset, they can go listen to the show. We talk about it.
Okay. So Tyler's going, and he's there already. And good things happen to that guy. And, and so he meets an insider. He meets the American priest there, who's an insider, takes a liking to him, and says, I'll help you, whatever you need, I'll help you. And so he's like, well, he can't help him get into the archive, right? So, but he can help him with anything else. But he does get in, and the reason he gets in, so as I'm traveling on the plane, I'm going, and we're texting back and forth, and he goes, what, can I just show them my credentials? Because he's got special credentials, right?
You weren't in airplane mode? You're going to crash the plane.
No, I was in airplane mode, but
Okay,
you can still, certain plane flights allow you to be...
I'm only teasing you.
No, I wouldn't do that. My goodness, I'm on the plane, okay? So, so it's Wi-Fi that allows you to text. That is whatever it is. So I'm texting him, and he says that he wants to show his credentials, and I'm thinking that's a bad idea, because it would be like the Air Force thing. They'll like kick us out, if they know anything about UFOs or anything like that, And I said I was there to do research, which I was there to do about the saints that are bilocating saints and flying saints and so forth, right? And look at the records and so forth. All right, so he's trying to get in, and finally he can't get in. It's like 2 hours later, and so he asked them, and I said, just show him whatever you need to show them, see if it works, like last ditch effort. And apparently it worked. Okay, his face came up on their screen, and they were like, "You're in." And I was like, wow, that's incredible. He knew that he would be able to get in. He was just waiting for me to give him the okay. So he was in. And then I finally got there, met him, and met the father, who would take us in. Now, I would not go anywhere in the Vatican without this father because of these guys, guys with the guns and so forth. Because if you're not, and I'm not looking like I'm a part of the Vatican, mostly they're guys and they're all wearing black, and they look a certain way, and I'm not looking like them. And so I'm easily identified. So there was a point when the father was not mean, and the mean guys were like, get out of here, they're going to escort me out. And the father comes back and says, no, she's with me, and they let me go. So all after that, I'm like almost hanging on to it, like following him around. But in the archive, he didn't come with me. So I was able to go. I'm a researcher. So they take you in. There's a rickety elevator that's kind of scary. You're hoping that you don't get, stuck in it. And it takes you down. And then there's a bunch of stairs that you go down. And then there's a beautiful, beautiful room. And you have to ask for what you came for.
Right.
And they get it, and they bring it to you. And you have to wear special gloves. And you sit down at your own table that kind of looks like this, and they're there to help you with anything you need. And then you sit there and you're with the book. You're with the book, the manuscript, or whatever it is. And probably there were about 10 people in there. And you shouldn't talk. Okay. Tyler didn't abide by those rules.
He doesn't follow.
No. And so he did a bunch of things that I was like, stop doing that, but I'm glad he did, actually, because there was a lot of information that we got from that.
Like what?
Okay, so part of what we got was information about the canonization record. So part of it was that we were looking into, especially Maria of Agreda. So this was a saint in the 1500s. Oh my gosh, I hope I got it right.
Maria of who?
Maria of Agreda. So she's a Spanish, So you might have to fact check, because I haven't talked about it in a long time. I'm sorry, it might be the 1600s. It most likely is the 1600s.
So let us know in the comments.
Okay. So anyway, so she is the lady in blue. And we do know about her in the American Southwest, because, in fact, after I wrote American Cosmic, in which this is described, people from the tribe that had seen her, right, during that time period, they reached out to me, and they were like, we want to know about your research, which I thought was really interesting. So she's this woman who was in Spain while the missionaries were here, from Spanish missionaries, evangelizing indigenous people in the American Southwest. Some of them didn't need to be evangelized because they had already been evangelized. And the missionaries were like, what? Who was here?
Right.
And they said, this lady. And they were like, so they had actually, not a photo obviously, but they had like a drawing of a nun, and they showed them the drawing. This lady? And they were like, God, no, younger, but she's wearing the same thing. And so That was weird, right?
Yeah.
And so you still see there are churches to her now here in the American Southwest and so forth, and all kinds of things and communities that still hold her in reverence. But she believed that I've read her books and her diaries, and she believed that she was traveling over the earth, and she could see the spinning earth between under her on the wings of angels. And she would come down into the American Southwest and teach these people about Jesus and so forth, and then go back.
Where did she travel from?
She traveled from her cell, she's a nun, in Spain.
Whoa.
Yeah,
So
it's
she
really
flies
crazy.
across the planet.
Yeah, she flies across the planet. And in her diaries, she